Podcasts. Oof. As I mentioned earlier, man. So I remember you guys started a podcast, and we have a small podcast. We have a little small podcast, and I was like, "Oh man, that's so nice." You know, those are such great guys. Yourself, we've had Street on. We haven't spoken with Caleb yet, so hopefully we'll be able to have Mr.
Coming
Barry
soon.
on. And I thought you guys were just doing your own thing. I said, you know what? They're having a nice podcast. We have a small podcast. They have a small podcast. And that's what I was thinking.
Wow.
And then I get on Instagram one day, and to my surprise, there are videos going around and
Going viral.
going viral, as the kids are calling it. And man, so I mean, it's been a joy to kind of see that process and the reaction you guys have had, and kind of just the influence you've already had. And it's been less than a year, right? Less than 5 months, even.
January.
So talk to us a little bit about the podcast, the heart of it, how you guys got into it, all that good stuff.
So it's funny though, because when Street came to me about the podcast, I was actually doing something else with somebody, another podcast. And it was one of those things where it was like, I love all of them to death, but I knew I was when I came onto that podcast, I was in the season where it was like, the Lord was saying like, hey, if I don't put something on your heart, don't try to take it over and lead it and try to direct it and steer it. And so I think that podcast taught me a lot about learning how to follow and learning how to be an asset to people who are leading. And that was something I struggled with and still do, work through that thing.
Right.
But, long story short, the podcast just kind of fills it out. And not because, like, it wasn't good content or, we had beef, but, like, everybody was just kind of going their different directions in life. And people just got busy. The guy who was kind of headed it up, he was working on his music a lot. And so, and just a lot of career changes. Everybody was just going through stuff. And so, and I can say this because Mitch knows where I live and he can come find me if he has an issue with it. And I've told him this several times. But Mitchell he is the essence of a creative. Calendars, invites, notes, taboo. Doesn't believe in them.
Yeah.
And so Mitchell came to me about this podcast like in May 2020. Like, I kid you not.
Yeah.
Hey, bro, we should start a podcast. And I looked at him, I said, okay. 2-3 months later, he puts me and one other person who we were originally going to do it with in a group text. Black men do talk. We're going to start it. Okay. And so this kind of repeats. And one of the original third member kind of just dropped out. And then I think, it must have been like January. Not January. Maybe like November, December. He's like, okay, I really want to do this. I said, okay. We had a meeting. And we just started talking. And what's crazy is that first meeting we had, it was me, Sway, Caleb, and Mitch. The conversation we had really could have been a podcast. Because of who Mitch is, and because like he literally is just like a fire starter. Like he's like a lighter fluid. You know what I'm saying? And then like me and Caleb aren't on that level, but like we kind of tag in and go in. It was just like, yeah, this conversation, this meeting lets us know we can really do something. We can really make something shake.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think it was just a perfect storm. Like, Mitchell understands how to engage on social media. He already had a following. Me and Caleb were two people who, were already kind of like dabbling in some things already. Caleb's doing a lot with 52 Creatives. I've been on a podcast before. And so it felt like we had the right pieces in place. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, we got the equipment, we pressed record, and it was just like, hey, fam, we're going to talk. And even, like, the one video that went viral, it was like, it wasn't even us.
Yeah.
Somehow, shout out to Sway, our cameraman, got me on the internet looking wild.
Oh, man. Yeah, that was...
I'm like, bro, what is going on?
Yeah.
It's like, even with that, it's like, the point of the podcast is like, these are conversations that we are having as men, as black men. And it's like the world should hear about it because, one, there are misconceptions floating around. This is how black Christian men think. This is how men think. This is how Christian men think. It's like, whoa. They don't speak for us.
Right.
Let us set the record straight. One. Two, giving people a platform. There are some conversations that haven't come out yet that really push the envelope, that really challenge, where the church sits on some things, which is good because we need to really sit here and challenge ourselves on where do we sit with how we've treated like homosexual and transgenders. Where do we sit on this abortion talk? Where do we sit on racism? Where do we sit on, the whole political landscape? Like, these are things that if you ask a non-believer or somebody who doesn't go to church, you could probably ask 10 different people and you get 10 different answers on where the church stands on so many things. And that's a problem. You know what I'm saying? People knew who Jesus was. I know they knew who Jesus was because they mocked him at his death. They said, hey, look who it is, the King of the Jews. He was very clear about who he was. We have a split perception in the world right now. There are so many people who think, oh, yeah, all pastors are thieves. So many people who don't go to church who think the church and Christians hate gay people. Some of us do, right? That's a problem. But the fact that our perception is so jaded and so far from who we really should be and really are actually affects our ability to kind of come out into the world and be in the world, right? You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of the heart behind a lot of our conversations. And then also, man, it's like, this is another form of being the church. This is another form of community, like having these conversations. That's why we have, shout out to Mitch, and really shout out to Mitch and Jay, because that first episode, that's where the whole idea for the live studio audience came into play, where she was kind of chiming in. Like, that's another part of it, is like, we don't want to just have y'all listen to us talk. We not up here. We want to be with y'all. We want to be with people, have the real conversations, right? Have the organic moments. You know what I'm saying? Have the real, honest conversations where it's like, yeah, we come, we laugh, we joke. There's other conversations where like, man, like, people are in here fighting back, holding back tears, and like, this is what it needs to be. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So that's really the heart of it. And yeah, bro, we just like to, yeah, that's really it. Yeah. And so who likes it is people who likes it. You know?
And it's interesting because, like, if you look at, I can't remember if it's in 1st or 2nd Peter that he mentions it, but basically Peter, in writing his letter, is basically like, hey, I know Paul's been writing to y'all. I know he, like, up here, and it's difficult to understand, so, like, I'm going to try to help y'all a little bit. And so even with that, like, we see that posture of, I don't want to necessarily say adapting, but a posture of just getting down to people's levels out of a love and out of a place of being sure in where you're at. And so therefore being comfortable in discussing. Because I think so many times whenever we aren't willing to discuss, and I see this in myself a lot, like whenever I'm hesitant to discuss something, it's because I'm not exactly 100% sure where I sit on it. In a place of, and for me, like, and this might be uniquely just me, I don't know, but in a place where it's like, okay, I feel like I've read a lot on this. I feel like I've watched a lot on this, but not necessarily talked it out to the point where I can articulate these thoughts that I've taken in. And at that, like, really able to fully comprehend those ideas to the point, because I mean, they say that a lot, is like the best way of knowing something is teach about it, whatever. But in that, I think a large amount of people, like, they just don't know where they sit on things, and so therefore they're not willing to discuss. And then from there just becomes a perception of whatever people group it is that they can represent to other people who are observing them, of just like, okay, then they're all like this, and become, using your word, like, jaded in that way. And it sucks because, I mean, for, like, as believers, like, we know that we shouldn't make those presumptions towards others, but at the same point, like, as non-believers, like, it's like, okay, like, I guess I can understand why they make presumptions, because it's not like they have the Bible to say don't do that.
Exactly.
And I think it's like, it's somewhere in Corinthians, Paul talks about, like, basically, hey, don't expect a non-believer to live like a believer. Like, why would we do that? Like, yes, we should call them higher, but, like, shouldn't surprise you that they're wilding out or whatever else. And And so even in that is just like, okay, we should assume that they're gonna. I won't say that. We should not be surprised if they make presumptions about us, and that if we're put in places to defend what we believe, and that is a lot of what the apostles did in Acts. And even, Jesus doing that in various ways in his life. Now, sometimes he spoke, sometimes he was silent. So we need to follow the Spirit in those situations and knowing exactly, hey, like, how do we handle, like, what is going on in this? And not even just even talking from, like, a heart posture and, like, a countenance standpoint. Because we can get to the truth standpoint as well. It's like, okay, all right, what is the truth in this? What does the Bible say? And then from there, it's like, okay, what's the heart posture and how do I actually like articulate this even further?
Yeah.
But so, the space that y'all are in is demonstrating not just courage and bravery, but like this, it's a fruit of diligence. It's something where you've been diligent, because it talks about being diligent and confirming your calling. And, help me out, Pastor. In 2 Peter 1, right? Yeah, there we go. So it talks about that in there, but I think there's a lot of other things to be diligent in that this is a fruit of for that.
For sure.